Thanks for tuning in to Talking with Tatum, where we have another one of our series where we meet our county commissioners. And today we have another one of our county commissioners, Ms. Lauren Breeze.
How are you today?
I'm doing fine. And of course, we appreciate you coming on to tell us a little bit about what you do with the county commission. People are familiar with Congress, the General Assembly for the state, and maybe city councils, but the county commission is the legislative body for all of Wilson County. And you represent which district?
District 18, which is the Lakeview Elementary area in Mount Juliet.
Now, one of the things, although Wilson County's got a large land area, that's one of the more densely populated areas that you represent.
It is, actually, and the majority of my district is actually all residential. Mm-hmm. I have 3 churches, an elementary school, a marina, and then the fire hall. But other than that, it's all houses.
And for folks that are traveling through Wilson County, you go down, and I'm kind of doing this from memory, you're on what I would call Lebanon Road or Nashville Pike.
Right.
Are you entirely on the north side of Lebanon Road?
I am. You have to actually turn up and go down Nonaville and go up toward the lake, and I'm up that direction. So basically, my southern border is Saundersville Road.
So you're
so I'm north of Saundersville Road.
Okay, still that's a pretty dense area down there, and a lot of lakefront homes and a lot of subdivisions down that way. But tell us a little bit. I'd like to start back in time, if you would, about where you were born and where you went to school. A little bit about your education and family, if you would share that with us, and we'll get to how you wound up. Where you are down there in the Lakeview area.
Sure, absolutely. I'm actually from Texas. I was born in the Austin area, and I went to Pflugerville High School, which probably doesn't mean anything.
PFL.
You got it.
Starts with that.
That's right, PFL.
Is that part of the hill country?
It's just outside of Austin, so on the north side.
Okay.
And so it's we're famous because if you've ever seen the TV show Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights, yeah.
Okay, well the TV show was actually filmed at my high school football stadium.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's where I'm from, and I went to Texas A&M University, and I've got an undergrad in marine transportation. So I went to Texas Maritime Academy. I was in the Merchant Marines, so I'm a third mate in the Merchant Marines.
Is that right?
It is right. I served on oil tankers. I worked for ARCO for a while, and then a company called Maritime Overseas on spot charters. So I was in charge of the ship for 8 hours a day.
So I mean, Texas kind of has this is fascinating to me because Texas is kind of known for one of the things, the oil business, the oil industry.
Right.
And but you wound up going to sea.
I did.
And how far would you go on a tanker? I mean, would you go around to the Persian Gulf? Or
most of my sailing was actually around the U.S., and that was by choice. Mm-hmm. I've been through the Panama Canal 3 times, so I've been up and down South America as well. But when I worked on it for ARCO, it was all on the West Coast. And then when I worked for Maritime Overseas, that was all Gulf of Mexico. So that way we didn't have long stretches. Mm-hmm. It's boring to be out there and go across the Atlantic. So I don't like to do nothing. So it's more entertaining. There's more to do when you've got 2 or 3 days at sea, and then you have to stop and then load or discharge product and then turn around and you're back at sea. So I enjoyed it.
Well, something people may not know, and this isn't, I'll just digress here a little bit. Chester Nimitz was a fleet admiral in the Second World War.
That is correct.
He was actually from not far from where you were, Fredericksburg, Texas,
That's right.
I believe.
He is. I've been to his museum. He has a very large World War II naval museum in Fredericksburg, Texas, in the middle.
I've been to it and down there, but it's amazing to me that a young lady from more or less central Texas wound up starting off her working career, going to the sea and going to the ocean. I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
But so you went to Texas A&M, which I think is in College Station.
Well, the main campus is in College Station, but the Maritime Academy is actually in Galveston.
Okay, down on the coast.
Right. So I was in the Corps Cadets.
Okay.
So I wore a uniform all through college, and I had, marching and drill and everything else you can imagine.
Right.
It's like going to any other academy. I sailed for about a year and a half, and got tired of being gone all the time.
Right.
So I got off a ship and randomly moved to Charleston, South Carolina, because it's someplace I'd always wanted to B and C, and I was still employed by a tanker company, and I figured I could try to get a shoreside job, and if it didn't work out, then I could always go back out if I needed to.
Right.
And I ended up working for a Mediterranean shipping company, which is a container ship company.
Okay.
And I was a port captain for them, which meant I did all the load planning, and I controlled 9 ships. So I worked with, so when you see container ships on TV and they've got the big gantry cranes that are moving the boxes back and
they're all
forth.
kind of stacked and so.
Right. Okay. So I did all the plans to tell them what boxes came on or went on, what boxes came off. So
I've noticed in seeing a lot of those container ships, those containers, the metal boxes, a lot of times they're different colors. Is that a code in any way saying we've got this type of good in this box, or is it used to configure your load on the ship? Or is
the color itself is actually usually just because of the different companies that own the boxes.
Okay.
So, but there are set standard sizes, and there's a code on each one of them. There's 4 letters, and then I think it's 7 digits, and then the last digit's actually a check digit is what it's called.
Right.
So there's a mathematical formula for the other 6 numbers to make sure it actually adds up to the check digit. So that way you can't tamper with a container number.
Okay.
So there's a lot of little things like that.
See, that's something, I don't even think about it, and it probably doesn't cross a lot of people's mind about that. And I imagine we're all wearing something or have bought something in the last few weeks that came here from a container ship.
Probably so.
And but you were in Charleston, South Carolina, working for a Mediterranean tanker, had 9 ships. And when did you decide that, well, I've seen enough of this and I want to move to Tennessee?
How did I get here? So Labor Day weekend of 2000, I went to visit a friend in New York City, and she took me to Windows on the World, which was the bar that was on top of the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And a gentleman asked me to dance, and 6 weeks later we were engaged.
Wow.
And he works for Deloitte, and he actually moved back to Austin with me. We both quit our jobs and jumped. And he worked from home for 10 and a half years. I went back to school. I've got an MBA in global business. And then ended up doing lots of project work because we had kids. And then Deloitte transferred us up here. We closed in our house January of 2012.
So y'all, the year before 9/11.
Correct.
Y'all met at Windows of the World on the top of, I guess, the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
Right.
And but that's where you met, and you said 6 weeks later you were engaged.
Yes.
Now, what's this lucky guy's name?
His name is Dominic.
Dominic. Where is he from originally?
England.
Okay. And so it was a big experience, I guess, going from England. Maybe not so much the United States, but he went back to Austin, Texas.
He did.
And he said he worked from home, and you went back to school.
Right.
And but he was working with Deloitte the whole time?
The whole time. And he's been with the firm since 1990. So, and then Deloitte moved us up here. So that's how we landed in Wilson County in January of 2012.
Okay.
And this is home. This is permanent home for me.
That's good to hear.
I'm not planning on going anywhere, which is one of the big reasons why I made the commitment to run for commission.
Well, you said you bought your home in 2012?
Correct.
And had you ever had any aspirations growing up in school, at time in the ocean when you don't have a lot to do to look at but water, thinking, I may run for public office someday, I'm interested in that?
This was not planned.
Well, tell us that.
This was not in my plans at all. I enrolled my kids in Wilson County schools. My son is currently a freshman at Mount Juliet High School, and my daughter is in 4th grade at Lakeview.
Okay.
So at the time, my son was in 1st grade at Lakeview.
Right.
And we just got really involved in the community, and I got really involved in schools and started learning about how schools are funded and how the whole system worked, and I wanted to be involved. So I waited until I ran in 2018. Adam Bannock was actually my commissioner in 2014,
right? And
he relocated. So he actually asked me if I wanted him to put me up, or him to put me up for his seat at that point in time. And I spent January of 2014 calling all 25 commissioners to ask, how much time does this take? Not just to do it, but to do a really good job.
Right.
And I just wasn't in a position with my kids being as young as they were at the time to be able to commit like I would want to. So I took my name out of consideration.
And that was?
That was 2014.
Okay.
So in 2018, my kids were older. I still really wanted to be involved, so I pulled a petition and I ran.
And that was your first foray into politics?
That was it.
And had a successful run
Yes.
with that, obviously. So your first term with
Yes.
the county commission.
Right.
Now you said you had talked with 25 county commissioners before about how much time it takes
Right.
and what all's involved. Now that you've got 2+ years in it, are you surprised by any of the amount of work or the information or things that you didn't have an idea that you were going to encounter?
I learned something new every day. I mean, I felt like I was pretty prepared coming into it. I mean, I'd sat with Aaron Maynard, and gone through budget in 2015, 2016, just as a citizen.
Right.
So I wasn't really, I was new, but at the same time, I at least had an idea as to how things worked. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I still learn something new every day. It's definitely, I probably spend 10 to 15 hours a week, sometimes more. It kind of depends on what's going on commission work.
Right.
I'm 90% through with my COCTP certification, which is it's Certified County Official certification through the University of Tennessee.
Okay.
I have 8 hours of elective credit left, 1 core class, a final, and then capstone. I should be finished in May.
Well,
so
I know tonight, before we went on talking about this, you actually got county commission meetings tonight.
we do. We've got committees this evening. So I'm on the education committee and emergency management. I'm also on rules. And then I was elected by the body to have a seat on the finance committee.
Okay, which is kind of controls the purse strings, but it sounds like that doesn't scare you, the big numbers that you see with the commas and the zeros that are involved.
No, with my MBA experience, I'm pretty versed in finances. So,
one thing I did want to mention, since you got interested first because of schools,
right,
and you've already mentioned that, can you give us an idea of our local budget, how much is spent on education?
The local budget, it's kind of deceptive because it says 70%, I believe, or 72, but that includes federal and state dollars that are already allocated to education. So the actual local portion is more along the lines of about 42-45% of the local dollars. So so if you remove the educational portion from our budget, we would lose 70% of our budget.
Really?
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we would lose the federal and the state dollars.
Yeah.
So
it wouldn't be able to function if we lost that.
Oh, I guess what I meant was if Board of Education took over the finances and had taxing authority to be able to actually control it, and it was separated from county commission, then 70% or so would be gone because, like I said, a significant percentage is federal and state dollars.
Well, don't want to run off into the weeds about the minutia of county finance on that because I know it can get really complicated really fast. And talking with folks, viewers who are here, getting to know you and getting to know a little bit about your district down there, have any words of advice? You've got a career, frankly, that I'm surprised and fascinating about the different things that you've done and seen.
Well, thank you.
But in your life experience, what would you like to share with somebody about these are some things that you ought to live as a theme of your life, or if you're interested in getting involved in local government, what would you recommend?
Start coming to meetings. All of our committees and all of our main committee or commission meetings are all open to the public. Call your commissioner, ask questions, get some information, get a budget book, take a look at it and see, ask questions about that. If you've got line item questions, ask how things function. And that's kind of how I started.
Well, it's a good to have that background because, as we all know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and you take statistical data and it can be twisted or turned and to suit somebody's agenda on there. So it's important to have somebody to know where it starts. Listen, thank you for sharing your time and your story here with us today, and I'm glad to know that we've got somebody that's been through the Panama Canal, and it sounds like you crossed the equator, I suspect.
I have, yes. I'm a shellback. So
there's some sort of designation.
There's a ceremony.
All right.
Yes.
Well, listen, one of the things I like to do for guests that come and share their time with us is to give you a commemorative coffee mug.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your time and sharing your story with us, and hope to be hearing from you again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.